Okay, so the world's population is getting older, right? Like significantly older.
Yeah, dramatically. We're looking at maybe 1.5 billion older adults globally by 2050. It's huge.
But with that comes this really critical challenge, often hidden,
Mhm.
elder abuse.
Mhm. And specifically, the most common kind, which often flies under the radar, is financial exploitation, FE.
FE. Okay, so what exactly is that?
Basically, it's the illegal misuse or hiding of an older person's money, property, their assets. Simple as that, but devastating.
And our deep dive today, it's based on a big systematic review, right? Looking into the factors behind FE.
Exactly. Unpacking what's associated with it and understanding this is, well, it's crucial for you listening because the stakes are just incredibly high.
Yeah, let's talk about those stakes. The numbers are pretty
They
shocking.
really are. Globally, about 1 in 6 older people face some kind of abuse.
1 in 6. Wow.
But FE specifically, it hits maybe 26% of older adults. Think about that.
A quarter of the older population.
And the financial cost is estimated at like $36 billion a year.
36 billion.
And that's just the money. It goes so much deeper.
How so?
Well, it hammers their physical health, their mental health, erodes their well-being, and this is chilling. It can actually increase mortality risk by 300%.
300%. That's staggering. It's literally life and death.
So, given how serious this is, what are some of the clearest factors the review found linked to FE?
Okay, so some links are pretty well intuitive. Cognitive function is a big one.
Makes sense, like dementia or just general decline.
Yeah, things like impaired judgment, fuzzy decision-making, memory problems, even just slower thinking speed, poor executive function. Research consistently shows this makes older adults much more vulnerable to scams, to manipulation.
And isn't there like a feedback loop
Yeah,
where the exploitation itself can make cognitive issues worse?
exactly. It's this awful vicious cycle. The FE can actually worsen the cognitive decline.
Oh, wow. What about emotional health?
Huge factor.
Mhm.
Depression, general emotional distress studies show they make people more susceptible.
Well, it can impair judgment, but also critically, it makes them less likely to actually report the abuse.
Okay. They might feel ashamed or unable.
Right. And if you think about social isolation, which often goes hand in hand with depression or distress,
That just makes it worse, more vulnerable.
definitely amplifies the risk. And physical health plays a role too.
How so?
Poorer physical health, lower physical performance, less ability to manage daily activities, especially those instrumental ones like managing finances or meds.
IEDLs.
Exactly, IADLs, all associated with a higher risk of FE. Basically, less physical autonomy can mean more vulnerability.
Okay, those links seem fairly clear. But you mentioned some factors are more counterintuitive.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. Take social support.
Okay, normally you'd think strong support is protective.
That's the assumption.
Yeah.
But one study found that a larger social network was actually linked to a higher risk of FE.
Wait, larger network, higher risk? That seems backwards. Why?
It's a real head-scratcher at first glance. But the review points out who the perpetrators often are.
Not strangers?
Frequently not. They're often close, trusted people, family members, friends, caregivers.
So a bigger network might just mean more potential exploiters within that circle of trust.
Exactly. They exploit those pre-existing relationships. It's an uncomfortable truth.
Definitely something for you to think about. What about personality? Does that factor in?
It does. And again, in some surprising ways, neuroticism, higher emotional instability, that seems linked to risk, maybe impairing decision-making. Makes sense.
Okay, that fits.
But, and this is fascinating, some research also linked higher levels of conscientiousness to an increased risk.
Conscientiousness, like being organized, disciplined, careful. How is that a risk factor?
Right. It flips the script. The thinking is perhaps those very traits, being trusting, rule-abiding, maybe less likely to question authority or someone they perceive as helpful, can be exploited by manipulators.
So the very qualities we often admire might be turned against them. That's subtle.
It is. And we also see contradictions in the demographics.
Like that.
Things like age, marital status, even substance use. The findings are all over the place. Some studies say younger old age is riskier. Others say older old age. Some say being married is protective. Others say it increases risk, maybe through a spouse or relative.
So no simple profile of a victim.
Not at all. It tells us these factors don't work in isolation. It's a really complex web. Trying to pin down one type is misleading.
And finally, the review mentioned race.
Yes, it noted a higher prevalence among racial minorities, particularly African Americans in some key studies.
And the reason for that?
It's attributed mainly to systemic issues, historical inequalities, socioeconomic disadvantages, maybe less access to financial literacy resources. These broader societal factors create vulnerability.
Okay, so pulling this all together,
Yeah.
what's the big picture?
Well, it's clear that financial exploitation of older adults is incredibly complex. It's messy. It's not just about the obvious vulnerabilities like cognitive decline. It's also deeply tangled up with trust, relationships, even personality traits we wouldn't expect.
So for you listening, this means looking beyond just, say, awareness programs, although those are important.
Right. It suggests a deeper need, maybe a societal responsibility to build critical thinking skills, financial literacy, across all ages, not just for older adults.
That's a really interesting point. So the final thought for you to chew on might be, how can we challenge our own assumptions about who's vulnerable? And how do we build communities where trust is valued, yes, but not easily exploited, not just for older people, but for everyone?